Good afternoon. My name is Thomas Cullen. I'm the U.S. Attorney for the Western District of Virginia. I've got a number of people behind me, behind the podium, who I'd like to introduce as well. Adam Lee, who is the Special Agent in charge of the Richmond Division of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. John Lankhart, who is the Assistant Special Agent in charge of the FBI's Richmond Division. Danville Police Chief Scott Booth, to my left. Michael Newman, the Commonwealth's Attorney for the City of Danville. Brian Haskins, the Commonwealth's Attorney for Pittsylvania County. Mike Taylor, the Sheriff of Pittsylvania County. We also have Mike Barbuti, who is the Assistant Special Agent in charge of the Drug Enforcement Administration out of Richmond. ATF Assistant Special Agent in charge, Sean Murrow, and Captain Rex Taylor with the Virginia State Police, all behind me on stage today. We are here this afternoon to announce the filing of federal racketeering and related charges against 18 members and associates of the Millas, a set of the National Blood Street Gang, and the Rollin' 60s, a set of the National Crips Gang, who until early this morning were actively operating in the city of Danville. Now, we've distributed press packets for you all. You will read there are actually two separate indictments. The first indictment charges 8 members of the Millas with racketeering conspiracy, violent crimes in aid of racketeering, including murder and attempted murder, and numerous counts of using firearms during the commission of these offenses. The second indictment charges 7 active members of the Rollin' 60s with racketeering conspiracy, violent crime in aid of racketeering, including murder and attempted murder, and multiple counts of using a firearm in relation to these violent crimes. Importantly, in this second indictment, we have also charged 3 female associates of the Rollin' 60s gang with being accessories after the fact, obstructing justice, and committing perjury in front of the grand jury. As set forth in the indictment, which you can read, among many other alleged violent crimes and other criminal activities, the members of the Rollin' 60s and the Millas are alleged to have planned and orchestrated the August 20th, 2016 shootout at the Southwick apartment complex that resulted in the murder of a young man named Christopher Motley, who was an innocent bystander. The RICO charges and other charges in this indictment are among the most serious federal charges that we can bring as federal prosecutors. If convicted, these alleged gang members face the possibility of multiple life terms in prison. Today's indictments mark the beginning of a sustained assault on the cycle of gang-related violence that has plagued this community for far too long. We are grateful for the leadership of the FBI over the last 12 to 18 months through their Violent Crime Task Force. Special Agent in charge Adam Lee has dedicated a number of resources making the city of Danville a priority. But we're also extremely grateful for the tireless efforts of the other task force members, particularly our state and local counterparts. I can't thank the chief of the Danville Police enough. His officers have been working on this case nonstop for the better part of the year. I also want to thank Mike Newman, who is a special assistant U.S. attorney, works closely with our office, and has been instrumental in building up to today's indictments. I also want to thank, in particular, Sheriff Taylor for lending resources, even though these alleged gang members and these gangs predominantly affect the city of Danville. Sheriff Taylor is a longtime member of this community and a trusted law enforcement partner, committed resources from his county along with his Commonwealth's Attorney Brian Haskins to support the larger initiative, and we're extremely grateful for their support. Quite simply, we wouldn't be here today taking 18 alleged violent gang members off the street but for the hard work of our local counterparts. This is a first step. As long as I am U.S. Attorney, we will continue to work together to identify the drivers of violent crime in this community and send them to federal prison. At this time, I'd like to call on Special Agent in Charge Lee to speak to other aspects of the investigation.
Good afternoon. It's been a long 48 hours. United States Attorney Cullen mentioned the critical nature of the partnerships to accomplish something like we did today. We could not have done it with the folks. I won't repeat the names for the sake of time, but we could not have done it without outstanding law enforcement executives that you see standing here today. And we also could not have done it without the Western District United States Attorney's Office and USA Cullen, who had perseverance through this. Attaining a RICO indictment is not an easy thing to do. And so the partnership has been longstanding and outstanding, and it serves the community here in this part of Virginia very, very well. So I did want to throw a thanks out to the FBI's hostage rescue team who came from Quantico, Virginia to keep our folks safe. That's what they do, and they were here to engage the tactical aspects of this case. We have some fugitives remaining, so I can't go too deeply into the evidence after today's operations, but suffice it to say it was tactically challenging and everyone was safe at the end of the day, and that's what matters to us when we're doing these types of operations. The Commonwealth of Virginia is hostile territory for gangs and violent criminal enterprises. We are not finished. I want to make this clear. We're not going away. We are partnered with the agencies you see behind me here to ensure that this community is safe from the scourge of violent gangs and their criminal activity. U.S. Attorney Cullen and the great men and women on this team won't stand for it. I want to make that clear. There are no get-out-of-jail-free cards for gang activity in this part of Virginia. We're here. We're not going away. We're going to be working in partnership with these agencies to ensure that the problem goes away. So what happened today is an example of coordinated law enforcement effort. It's not something that any law enforcement agency can accomplish on its own. It's necessary to work with the local agencies, the Danville Police Department, the Pittsylvania County Sheriff, principal among them for this operation, and as always, the great Virginia State Police, who works with us in virtually everything we do here in the Commonwealth. It's my understanding, I think one of the things that is essential is law enforcement, I think, has demonstrated today that we are going to do our part. We are going to do our part. I think it's now critical that the community step up with us and do its part to work with law enforcement. We are going to support them, but they are the boots on the ground here in these communities, working to keep these communities safe. We need the community's help working with them to ensure that the problem doesn't grow back and fill the gaps that we created today. So again, thank you very much, gentlemen, for what you do. Thank you for the partnership. And with that, I'll turn it back to U.S. Attorney Cullen.
Chief, would you like to say anything? Yes, sir, if you don't mind. All right, good afternoon. I will be brief. A lot of great things have already been said, but I just want to reiterate a couple things. First of all, once again, I want to thank U.S. Attorney Cullen, Special Agent in Charge Lee, Sheriff Taylor from Pennsylvania County, Commonwealth Attorney Michael Newman, Captain Taylor from the Virginia State Police, and all the women and men from the U.S. Attorney's Office, the FBI, the DEA, ATF, U.S. Marshals, Virginia State Police, the Danville Police Department, and the Pennsylvania County Sheriff's Office that have worked tirelessly not only today, but for the months leading up to today. Also want to say a special thank you to City Manager Ken Larkey for having both the vision and the patience for this investigation to take shape in the previous months. The last few years have been challenging for the city of Danville. Homicides and shootings have increased, and violence associated with gangs have been on the rise. Many people tell me they are afraid to leave their homes at night. But I'm here to tell you that as a community, standing together, in moments like today, we can overcome this. We are stronger than the crime and fear of crime that has gripped our city, and working together, we can solve this problem. This has been a true partnership where everyone is focused on one overarching goal, which is to make the city of Danville a safer place for everyone. It is my belief that because of the efforts of the men and women that you see before you and the men and women in the rear of this room, that Danville is a safer place today than it was yesterday. Thank you.
And Mike Newman.
Good afternoon. About a little over 18 months ago, it's actually two of your assistants sitting in my office, Heather Carlton and Ron Huber, and they were discussing the various ways that they thought that we could get together with the federal government as well as other agencies in reference to start attacking this gang and violent problem. And it occurred to us then, there's several agencies, you see them here today, the ATF, DEA, State Police, Danville Police Department, Pennsylvania County, doing lots of things in reference towards that problem. But as you've already heard, it took a collaboration of their efforts together. That's why we're here today. I coach my daughter's softball team. And one of the things I tell them before each game, it's amazing what a group of people can do together when no one cares who gets the credit. And ultimately, that's why we're here today, because we have entities who decided, we're going to do what's best for the city, for the best of the Pennsylvania County. It doesn't matter if the city, the state police, the ATF, it doesn't matter who gets the credit. And based on that, and after several months of hard work by the men and women you see behind you, as well as several that are still out there today doing the work, as has already been touched on, some of these individuals have not been picked up, so they're still actively working today on this. We get to come to you here today, both as a end in reference to the investigation, but has already been touched on, a beginning of the concerted action of these entities to make sure that the city of Danville and the surrounding area is a place that its citizens can be proud of to live in a safe community. And as already been touched on, it's not just law enforcement. It will also take the citizens to assist. We're only as good as our witnesses, those who are willing to come forward to cooperate with law enforcement, to give you, the citizens, the city you deserve. I thank everyone again, and I'll turn it back over to you, Attorney.
So we have time. We'll try to answer a few questions if you all have any. Yes, sir.
Charles Started, you've got 18 today. How many more do you think you got to get?
Again, this is the first step in a long-term effort. I think it's a substantial step. We're hopeful we're doing this early in the summer. Our hope is we'll see violent crime decrease during the summer months, which, as you know, we tend to see increases in violent crime. But through sustained effort and continued cooperation between ATF, the Danville Police Department, FBI, and DEA, Virginia State Police, this is the first, hopefully, of other substantial indictments and law enforcement initiatives that we'll be rolling out, at least while I'm in this office as U.S. Attorney.
You think you can push it out?
What's that?
You think you can push it out, with a message like you're doing today? Do you think you can get these people out of town?
We're going to do our best, and we're going to be here, and we're going to be working on this day in and day out. As I said before, this problem has plagued this community for far too long. We all recognize it. We've all been working on it and aware of it for a long period of time, and collectively we made the decision that we've had enough, and we're going to do whatever it takes and marshal as much federal, state, and local resources as we can.
One more question. You said it's tough to get these kind of charges. Why is that?
These are complex charges. You can read the indictment. It really speaks for itself with respect to having to prove the organizational structure, the underlying acts that go back several years. When you bring a racketeering case, that requires approval at the highest levels of the Department of Justice. In the criminal division, the Assistant Attorney General and his folks have to approve this indictment, and it just takes a lot of time and effort to go this particular route. The benefits of doing that are the mandatory penalties associated with convictions of RICO and associated charges.
Bruce Hedrick, SouthsideCentral.com. Can you describe the efforts of today's apprehension?
I'm going to defer to Special Agent in Charge Lee.
Sure.
So we had literally hundreds of agents and officers, task force officers and officers that are working collaboratively with the FBI in the tactical side of this case today. We are not going to disclose where we developed our command post and all that because we're still at it. We're at it right now. But it was an extensive built command post with radio feeds. We had aerial assets. We had aerial platforms providing intelligence to us. So the goal is, in an event like this, when you're dealing particularly with violent serial offenders, the goal is to keep our folks safe, obviously, and to keep everyone involved in the operation, to include the folks that we're looking for, safe. So again, it's a lot of moving parts, and it took a lot of planning and a lot of coordination. And again, it sounds repetitive, and it might be, but it's worth it. The folks standing behind me, we could not have done this without the full collaboration of the folks standing behind me and their agencies.
What kind of a dent does this make in the gang activity here in Danville? I mean, 18 people sounds like a lot, but if we've got 5,000 gang members in Danville, 18 people's not a huge dent. So how big of a dent would you say that these arrests, these charges really make in the gang activity here in Danville?
I'm going to let you chime in. I think the consensus is among the folks who have been around for a while in law enforcement in this area that this is the most significant prosecution of a gang in at least a decade, probably 2 decades. I can't tell you how many gang members we have in the city of Danville, but we have 18 alleged gang members in this racketeering indictment. And I can tell you, based on what I've heard this morning, the news of this indictment and those arrests have spread like wildfire in social media and throughout social media. It is our hope that this will achieve a deterrence effect, that this will cause a meaningful reduction in the violent crime rate. That said, we know this is just a start. This isn't a panacea. Violent crime is not going to go away for this community, but we're going to be here until the problem is under control, and we're dedicated to that mission.
Why did you guys choose to go after the Millas in the rolling 60s?
I don't want to speak to kind of the ins and outs of how we make investigative determinations, other than we follow the evidence where it leads, and we follow the evidence in this particular case, and it resulted in the lengthy racketeering indictment you all have in front of you.
And do these 18 arrests that have been made, does that pretty much wipe out the Millas in the rolling 60s, or are there still, Milla and rolling 60 gang members on the streets that you guys are actively going after?
I don't want to speak to ongoing aspects of the investigation, except to say that investigation is ongoing. We think, to borrow your term, we've made a dent today, but we're not finished.
One other question. You said the Millas and rolling 60s are kind of local chapters of the Bloods and Crips, respectively. So can you say how many other local chapters of the Bloods and the Crips there may be here in Danville?
We are aware of significant gang activity in this community. That's not news to anyone. The troubling trend that these folks have appreciated over the past couple of years is the national association, where historically 10, 15 years ago these were homegrown local gangs. Now we're seeing tie-in with these national groups, as evidenced by this particular indictment. And when you have more association with the national gang networks, you have an increase in violent activity and organized criminal activity as set forth in this particular indictment. Yes, sir.
I cover South Side. How reaching is this game? Do you think it's considered in Danville? Does it get to Martinsville? Does it get to Rockville, North Carolina? I mean, what sort of outreach is this game?
So let me say that this particular gang, we believe, predominantly operates within the Danville area, right? It's not necessarily confined to the boundaries of the city of Danville. Obviously, that's going to spill into Pittsylvania County. It's going to spill across the border into North Carolina. There are ties to larger cities in North Carolina. Certainly, you go west into the Martinsville area, there are going to be connections, just like any other criminal organization. But this group in particular, these folks came up in this city. They became gang members in this city, and they've been perpetrating this type of illegal activity in this city for the last several years.
Matt Bell, Chatham Star Tribune. You guys, this is big. Being somebody that's lived here my whole life is huge. What would you say to somebody today that may have knowledge of gang activity in a community? Who should they reach out to? 2016 was one of the violent years on record in Danville, and if people have knowledge of those murders and things that happen, who can they reach and contact?
They can reach, I'd start with the Danville Police Department. We can certainly make numbers available. Obviously, the FBI and all the agencies represented here. I think the easiest thing to do is just pick up the phone and call someone. Now is the time, and I think, as evidenced by the fact that we charged 3 associates, folks who were not actual gang members, with lying and obstructing justice, not telling the truth when asked about these activities with federal crimes, indicates that it's time to become part of this team and get ahead of this problem.
You mentioned the August 20th, 2016 incident. Are there any other specific incidents that you're aware of that these specific gang members were involved in?
So I'm going to have to refer you to the indictment. That will outline the course of conduct that's alleged with respect to these gang members, and at this stage of the investigation, we rely on what we put in that written document.
Is this the largest ever for your department, for this man?
In recent memory, okay, I was an assistant U.S. attorney before I was U.S. attorney. A lot of these guys have been around a lot longer than I have, and I think the collective recollection is nobody remembers a federal gang case that came about as a result of local, state, and federal cooperation this significant, this large, this sweeping in the last decade or two.
Doesn't the work really begin now? I mean, now that you've got them getting behind bars, but you got to go prove this, right?
We got to prove it, and that's our job, and I've got my best prosecutors on the case. We've alleged a lot in that indictment, but I'm confident we'll prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. Yes, sir.
Sky from WFM1 in Greensboro, North Carolina. So I'm curious, well, not curious, but like 18 people is a lot of people, so that's awesome. But that also probably means that gang members are probably watching this conference right now. What do you have to say to them? That's what I want to know.
I hope that they're thinking long and hard about their continued association with these criminal organizations. If you are a member of one of these gangs and you weren't charged today, we're on to you. Now is the time to come forward and cooperate with investigators so you don't end up being indicted and arrested in the coming weeks and months. Yes, sir.
You arrested 18, but how far up the chain locally do those reach? I mean, do we take out folks that are on the top, or are we just skimming the surface?
I think if you, and we just gave you this lengthy indictment, but if you have an opportunity to read it, and then once we begin to lay out our evidence in court, I think it's safe to say we will establish that we took out the leadership structure of these 2 gangs with this indictment.
Previous administrations in the city have denied that there was gang activity. Is it official to say today that there is gang activity in the city that's greater than that?
Hey, Matt, I would love to speak to that. So I can't speak for previous administrations, but I can tell you my boss, Ken Larkin, and I have worked together to certainly acknowledge that we have some issues here. And I also speak to Coulter's question or about the 5,000 gang members. We certainly don't have 5,000 gang members here in the city. I won't talk specific numbers, but we do have a gang issue. This 18 is going to help our gang problems here. Is it going to solve all our issues? Absolutely not. But we are doing things with our partners to address these issues. And this is just only one small part. The arrest of these 18, regardless of where they are in the hierarchy of the gang, is not going to solve all our issues in the city of Danville. There's not. We have an ongoing effort with our partners in the Virginia State Police, where I have officers going out 3 or 4 nights a week getting illegal guns off the street. Hopefully those guns belong to gang members or potential gang members. I hope that's going to have an impact. We have a youth engagement officer now in Sylvia Brooks. Is Sylvia back there? No? She's gone? I want to give her a shot. A youth engagement officer and a community and youth engagement unit now that hopefully can intervene in young people before they even join a gang. Because I would much rather solve our issues here in Danville outside of an arrest, but giving young people options before they turn to a life of crime or before they turn to gangs. Okay?
How about a dent? Can you, I don't know, a 100 scale, is it 20% dent? I mean, can you put...
I'm not going to give you a percentile. And like Mr. Cullen said, like U.S. Attorney Cullen said, this is a big part of our gang leadership. So I am hopeful on that, on what kind of dent we're going to have. You know, gangs are amorphous things. They move around. Leadership folks jump in and fill leadership positions or whatever. This is only the start, okay? We will keep the pressure up. None of these men and women behind me or in the back of the room are going anywhere. This is just a first step, and a healthy first step.
What is the advantage of being in a gang?
Why do you ask me such big questions? You know, these are always one of the things. So advantage of being in a gang, I couldn't tell you, except that it's a sense of belonging. Maybe sometimes when I talk to groups, I said this gives people a reason to want to, I don't know, to be a part of a group of young men or young women to get out there. I'm a member of Rotary. Maybe the same vacuum is filled when they join such a group. But, gangs have been around a long time. We could talk about the history of gangs, and I can tell you, it certainly spans centuries, well before, we're sitting here where we are in the city of Danville.
Chief,
Yes, ma'am.
Who did you say was heading up that community and youth engagement unit?
So Captain Tommy Merricks is in charge of that, but my youth engagement officer is going to be Sylvia Brooks.
Sylvia Brooks.
Yeah, and Sylvia's done a couple of good things with that unit already in reference to, youth engagement days that she's been having on Fridays. We have a summer youth camp that's getting ready to start on June the 22nd, I believe. You got to give young people options. I firmly believe we can't arrest our way out of almost any problem here. But you know what? Some people need to go to jail, especially people that do bad things, and today is a start on that. All right? Yes?
They brought you in here to kind of fix this problem. Do you think this is a good day for you?
I'm happy to be standing up here in front of you. Yeah, it is a good day. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Did you guys run into any issues? Like, were they apprehended without incident? Was there anything?
I don't want to misspeak, but right now I think tactically we're at a good place.
Okay.
All right?
They didn't, fight or anything?
As far as speaking on tactics and strategy, we're in a good place. We are.
Do you know when the indictments be sent out in digital form, emailed out?
Sorry.
So they are available through PACER, which is the federal court's website. But Brian McGinn, who is my public information officer, is in the room. If you give him your card, he can make sure you get one.
Will mugshots be available?
Brian can answer questions about what's available through the public resource.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you all very much for coming.